On today's episode of You Asked, what's a good TV upgrade for your bedroom? How should you approach the brightness settings in your Blu-ray player? And we discuss the frustrations of finding reviews for TVs sold at Costco. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is You Asked, the show where we answer your tech questions. If you've got something you want to know, send your question to youasked@digitaltrends.com. And don't forget to tune into the show to see if your question has been selected. Tom Soker has the first question, and he says, I want to know the effect of the TV type setting on my Panasonic Blu-ray player. I have it connected to a 77-inch LG G4. Dude, nice TV. According to the datasheet, the settings in the player correspond to the following brightness mapping of HDR content. The OLED setting, which targets 800 to 1000 nits, or the super high luminance LCD setting, which targets 1500 to 2000 nits. The LG G4 has a peak brightness for highlights at about 1500 nits. So wouldn't it be correct to select the super high luminance LCD TV setting on the player to not limit its output to the TV? Good question, Tom, and that's interesting. My thinking is it depends on the type of content and format, because not everything is gonna reach that peak brightness of 1500 nits. A lot may not even come close on an OLED TV. So I think that's why the Panasonic player has those settings. Now, I may be stepping a little out of my depths here, so feel free to debate in the comments and let me and others know your thoughts, but I do want to try to answer this and give some numbers as evidence. Since we're talking about high-end TVs, let's use the Sony Bravia 9 and its measurements as a super bright LCD TV as a comparison for a couple of scenarios. If you're viewing SDR content, the highest bit of brightness you'll probably get, assuming you turn off eco mode and tune all the settings to get the most out of the picture on the LG G4, is about 650 nits in a small window and 317 nits sustained in a full window, according to the measurements in our review. And in that case, you certainly don't need the highest brightness settings from your player. By comparison, the Bravia 9 gets significantly brighter. I don't think we pushed it near its max in our review, at least among the numbers listed in it, but ratings measured it at 2600 nits peak in a 2% window and 700 sustained full screen. In HDR, yes, the LG G4 does peak at around 1500 nits in a 2% window. So to get the most out of specular highlights, think stars in the night sky, bright sunlight, lightsabers maybe, you will want that super high luminance setting turned on to see those pop. But across the full screen, those numbers tail off significantly to the tune of about 220 nits of sustained brightness. The Bravia 9, meanwhile, once again peaks around 2600 nits in a small window, and then on a full screen around 750 nits sustained in HDR. And obviously there are different peaks of brightness along the way depending on the window size. I'll leave a screenshot of ratings measurements comparison for you to see. The point is, the Bravia 9 and most LCD TVs are going to be significantly brighter than OLED across the board, and that's why the Panasonic player gives the ratings it does. To answer your question, kind of like I said when we started, it all depends. If it's SDR, you don't need that super high luminance setting. For HDR, which given your setup, I'm assuming you're watching quite a bit, I'd say try both. In the OLED brightness setting, if you notice specular highlights being capped or not standing out like they should on a premium TV like the G4, go to the higher level. Otherwise, just according to the numbers, it seems like that 800 to 1000 nits mark it gives for OLED luminance is the best option overall. Next up, Man's Woodland Perspective has more of a statement than a question, but it's very relevant nonetheless. They say, it's almost impossible to find Costco TV reviews and find equivalents. Well, to that, I would say it will continue to be impossible to find reviews if you're only looking at the exact model number. In some cases, depending on the specific TV, Costco will have different model numbers than other retailers for a few reasons. It allows them to sell TVs at whatever price they agree to with their unique deal with the manufacturer, which is often less than others since they're buying in high quantities. But to sell for less, they need a unique model number. The actual differences in the TV from Costco or another retailer, however, aren't always that different if they're different at all. Sometimes the difference is as little as just an extended warranty. Sometimes, in the case of this year's TCL QM6K and the QM6K Pro that's offered at Costco, the difference is in the type of panel used, which is obviously a lot more significant. In that case specifically, you're pretty hard pressed to find video reviews because we aren't buying these TVs to review. We get them as part of a reviewer program and are allowed to hang on to them for a set amount of time before they're returned to the manufacturer. And it's usually the model that's going to be widely sold across multiple retailers within a large region. Unless it's bought from Costco, reviewers aren't going to get that specific model to review. But again, most of the time, it's not a big deal. The best way for you to track down reviews for TVs to purchase from Costco is to do a little bit of tedious research. Compare the model numbers to someone like Best Buy, for example, and look for little differences. It might also be worth looking at a list of features or specs to double check the TV comes with everything you expect it to. Personally, I'd say it's best to look at the general model name, like Samsung QN90F, rather than the exact model number where things might get more confusing. And if the general name is the same, you shouldn't see many differences, if any, between the Costco version and another. And I'll say this, in doing a bit of research for this question, TCL seems to be the one to pay the most attention to in terms of Costco variants. For example, their QM7K is an outstanding TV. We've talked about it a lot. The Q77K, which sounds very close to the QM7K, is not at all the same TV, or even close. And if someone heard all the good things said about the QM7K and then got confused and purchased the Q77K, they'd be pretty disappointed. And that just rubs me the wrong way. So you're right. It's a very frustrating process and it's not unintentional. It makes comparing prices more difficult and stresses out the buyer. And it's easily my least favorite part about trying to keep up with TV news. Finally, Thomas Swift says, I upgraded my sitting room TV to a new OLED last year and moved my 55-inch LG C8 to the bedroom. The question is, do you think my old OLED TV is better than most of the new LCD panels on the market in 2025? It has no burn-in and still has a good picture. The only difference is in the dark scenes compared to my newer OLED. Is it still good or am I fooling myself? And should I update it for a newer model LCD? Good question, and one I just had some real-world experience with too. My practical advice would be to stick with the C8, especially given how well it's held up and the fact that you still seem to enjoy it. We've had several questions about the C8 OLED lately, probably because it was a big seller when it came out, and the proof of its legend is in the fact that 7 years later, we're still talking about it and debating whether or not it's time to upgrade. That said, I do think if you're running into pain points with dark scenes, you'll find improvements in newer LCD TVs, especially those in the top tier. Think Samsung QN90F, Sony Bravia 7 or 9, TCL QM8K, Hisense U8QG, there are a lot. What they don't have is the infinite contrast and pure black of OLED, but what they do have is much more brightness capability. Coupled with the fact that technological improvements have allowed them to get closer to OLED and improve black levels, and overall, these newer LCD TVs provide a viewing experience in SDR and HDR that's incredible, even compared to OLED. Recently, a friend of mine who enjoys the LG C5 OLED in his living room was looking at a couple of different TVs for his bedroom, the LG C2 and TCL QM8, OLED versus mini LED. He ended up going with the TCL QM8, and his first text to me was, "This TV is effing amazing." And this is someone who regularly watches a great OLED panel as well. So hopefully that tells you a little something about how it feels to watch these TVs in a vacuum rather than see them compared on YouTube. OLED is amazing, but I've yet to come across more than one or two TVs that we've discussed on this channel or reviewed that I wouldn't put in my living room in a heartbeat. If you can find a good LCD TV for a good price, I 100% support that decision. As always, thank you everybody for tuning in. These were fun to answer this week. So I appreciate y'all getting some interesting questions in. Keep them coming and we'll see you in the next episode. Elevate your smartphone with the Digital Trends app bundle. 17 premium apps in one plan. From productivity to entertainment, it's all here. Start your free trial today by clicking the link in the description.